We're discussing rays, radio and radiation. Joining me are a panel positively glowing with talent from across the comedy spectrum. An alpha male, it's Josh Widdicombe. Hard to beat her, it's Shazia Mirza. Gamma for a laugh, it's Joe Lycett. And give us a microwave, Alan Davis. And let's hear their buzzers. Josh goes.
Warning, radiation level rising.
Oh, Shazia goes.
Alert! Radiation level critical.
Wow. Joe goes.
Meltdown imminent. Evacuate the area.
And of any kind of radioactivity, the most dreaded sound imaginable, Alan. Now, before we start, I happen to know that one of you encountered a lot of radioactive material when you were a child. Do you know who it was?
Warning.
Yes, Josh.
It was me.
It was you. You were
What a start!
positively glowing. Why is that?
Because I was bitten by a radioactive spider. No, I grew up on Dartmoor, and there was radon.
Yes.
So we used to have these radon detectors.
Yeah.
That I had one in my room that was like a kind of plastic yellow thing that would kind of sit on a shelf and would tell you if there was radon.
Do you really believe that? It sounds like some toy your children...
I'm now starting to question whether my parents just...
mucking about.
Yeah, were taking the piss, yeah.
No, but you're right. Especially the middle of Dartmoor is the worst place in the country for radon.
Is that why he's so small? No, because you know that radiation causes mutations.
Yes, the largest source of radiation that the UK public gets comes in the form of gases radon and thoron, and being in the middle of Dartmoor, that's absolutely the worst place. Now, you two are the Birmingham team. You both grew up in Birmingham. It's actually an island of low radiation. It's very low risk, a bit like Essex.
Should we be proud of that?
Yes. I love Birmingham. I think Birmingham's fab, yeah.
Yeah, I do as well.
I love the canal. I think the canal's fantastic, no?
Really?
We used to go on canal holidays to
Birmingham?
To Birmingham.
God, he is mutated.
You live in the most beautiful county in England and you go to Birmingham on your holiday.
It was a real refreshing change, actually, to see people. But my dad would say the great thing about Birmingham for canal holidays, it's got more miles of canal than Venice.
That's true, it
Which
has.
implies he'd considered Venice.
Josh, do you know why residents in Devon and Cornwall are exposed to quite as much radiation as they are?
No, I don't.
It's the ground rock. It's largely granite.
Granite.
So the granite contains small amounts of uranium that decays and that produces radon, and you can be exposed to as much as 7 millisieverts of radiation per year. So that's the same as having a CT scan. It's the same as taking 85 transatlantic flights. It is weirdly the same as eating 70 kilos of what, do you think?
Granite.
Brazil nuts.
Oh, I eat so many Brazil nuts.
They contain quite a lot of radon because they have very deep roots which can get right down into the soil that's high in radium.
What's an unsafe amount of Brazil nuts?
I mean, I think anything under 70 kilos, you're probably going to be OK. Now, how would you sell a house right next to a nuclear power plant?
How do you sell it?
Yeah, how would you sell it?
Right move?
I don't know. I mean, estate agents?
Yes, go to the estate agents.
Well, when you take photographs,
Yeah.
face the other way
Yeah.
OK.
and then try and distract people.
You are exactly right. Have a look at this. This is 2009. This was a charming three-bedroom Kent cottage that was for sale. The estate agent failed to mention the view if you stood behind the house. Let's just have a look at the view from... There we are. yards from Dungeness nuclear power station, one of the largest nuclear power stations in Europe, and they didn't mention it. When they were asked about it, they said, the thing is, anywhere on Dungeness is close to the power station.
And if the nuclear power station are out, you have to collect their deliveries as well.
Yes, that's right.
Can you hold on to this glowing box for 12 hours?
But Alan gets an extra point for saying you would face the pictures away from the nuclear power station. Right. Absolutely right. Which Ray changed the world of fashion forever?
Billy Ray Cyrus?
Oh, right, Billy Ray Cyrus.
Terrible dresser. Ray Winston was even worse.
OK. Can I just say how cute that Ray is? Isn't that the sweetest thing?
I'm not sure if it's cute or deadly.
Yeah.
Yes, it's probably...
Might be both.
Yeah, might be both.
Is this what we're going to evolve into? This is like something from a Doctor Who episode, when this is where we'll be in a billion years.
If you live
obviously...
in that house next to the power station...
Obviously, Josh will mutate first.
Lovely, it's lovely colours.
It is beautiful. Some of the very first beneficiaries of X-ray technology were fashionable women. So, if you have to imagine, the mid-19th century, it was very, very fashionable.
Ray. Oh, we'd have been here all
X-ray.
night.
Yeah, I'm here to help. So, mid-19th century, women wore heavily boned corsetry, so sometimes more than 100 whale bones. It was incredibly popular, but it obviously restricted movement, breath, and so on.
Not for whales. They were feeling great.
Yeah, they were.
Oh, it was so much freer.
Freedom.
I can't sit up at dinner, but I don't care.
Anyway, there was lots of concern for many years, but people couldn't prove it until X-rays came along. So there was a French doctor called Ludovic O'Fallowell. Anyway, 1908, he took some photographs and he wrote a book called Le Corset, and it showed women's ribs being displaced by Victorian corsets. And partly thanks to him, fashions changed and you get the Edwardian busks with more straight lacing, and they end higher up, and that really helped women because it was killing them.
Saved lives.
It did save lives, absolutely. Anybody know who discovered X-ray?
Oh, it was that German man.
It was...
And his middle name's Conrad. Is that right?
Yes, it was a German man, yes,
What
indeed.
an interesting way to remember people's names.
His name was Wilhelm.
See?
Yeah, very complicated.
Not easy to remember.
No, Wilhelm Röntgen.
She doesn't like that at all. That date was going so well. And later on, I shall be introducing this into our play.
Well, you see, it is interesting because his wife needed to be there because the very first X-ray that he took was of her hand.
Is that his wife?
Yes.
What?
Well, I think it's a poor depiction, if I'm frank with you.
see.
1895, he discovered the X-ray almost... It's one of those things that was almost sort of by accident. He took an X-ray of his wife's hand, and you can see the dark shadow on it, and that is caused by her wedding ring.
Oh, I thought it was a drone.
It's an Oreo.
It's an Oreo drone in 1895.
Why is it so irritating when your children take apart an Oreo or a bourbon?
Yes.
Why do I find myself saying, don't pick it apart, just eat it as it is? Every time I can't...
I think the problem might be with you rather than them.
Well, I know. I don't doubt that, but that just... But why? Of all the many messes that they make, why is that so
They're
annoying?
curious.
No, I don't wish to turn this into therapy, but I'm going to suggest it's not about the biscuit.
They go like that. Just eat it!
All right.
Eat your Oreo, it's good for you.
I've never let them have a hobnob because of the potential mess.
Anyway, I need you to imagine that nobody had ever seen an X-ray
An Oreo
before.
or an X-ray.
Nobody had ever seen an X-ray before. This was the very first time that anybody had seen the bones inside the human body. And his wife, Mrs. Röntgen, looked at it and said, "I have seen my death." I mean, it was really shocking to people. He did get the first ever Nobel Prize in Physics 6 years later for it. And there was a kind of mania. It was known as a Röntgen mania. In fact, his name is still used in Denmark for X-rays. There were 50 books published on X-rays in a single year. There were theatre plays with X-ray-themed plays. Newspapers advertised special X-ray-proof underwear for women.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thomas Edison demonstrated something called a fluoroscope. You could put your body parts in and see your bones on the screen.
Is it very dangerous, though? Because,
Yes, darling, it is really
Incredibly dangerous. When did they find out it was dangerous?
The next year. 23 cases of severe X-ray injury reported in scientific journals. And despite that, they used X-rays to cure things for decades, and doctors would prescribe sort of an X-ray seance for cancer and tuberculosis, acne, ringworm, I mean, all sorts of things. They said it could remove unwanted body hair. It did, but it also left patients ulcerated, bedridden and suffering.
Dead.
Dead, some dead, yes.
Yeah, but so smooth.
Slip straight into the coffin.
Now, what's the defining characteristic of Nazi toothpaste?
Whitening, frightening, depending where you put it, very tightening. I mean, Scott, you must have got your hemorrhoid cream mixed up with your Savalon.
No. No, I've never had hemorrhoid cream.
No,
That must be awful.
I had suspected hemorrhoids.
Congratulations.
So I phoned up the doctor.
And he went, what?
And, I was like, can I get an appointment? I think I've got hemorrhoids. They were like, oh, we've got to do over-the-phone consultation. The doctor will phone you back. And she phoned me back and she was like, could you describe your symptoms? And I've never really had, like, an embarrassing illness down there before. So I described my symptoms downstairs. And I was quite embarrassed by it, because as you can see, I'm not stumbling here.
No.
Don't worry, no one will know.
And then I got to the end and she went, are you the comedian, Josh Widdicombe?
Oh, I had somebody ask me that while I was having a colonoscopy.
What, they asked you if you were Josh Widdicombe?
Yes. Wanted to know if I was Josh Widdicombe, and it turned out there'd been a misunderstanding with a phone call.
I'd like the idea they're in your colon. They go, that looks like Josh Widdicombe.
I recognise that anyway.
Can I just say to everybody as a health warning, if you do not need a colonoscopy if all you've had is beetroot. I'm just going to put it out there.
So I had basically the same, sort of the same thing. I had.
Is this like a hemorrhoid helpline?
Yeah. Chris, have your fibre. That's all I can say. I went to the GP and I had a hemorrhoid, and I sat down next to this quite elderly lady, and she went, "You're the comedian, aren't you?" And she said, "I keep thinking I see famous people around here. I thought I saw the Pope in B&Q." And then we were chatting a bit, and she sort of said, what are you in for? And I tried to sort of find a euphemism, so I said, and it was around Christmas, I said, I'm growing a little cranberry, is what I said. And she was like, oh, and she went, how festive.
Right. The question was, what's the defining characteristic of Nazi toothpaste?
How did we get onto ourselves? Oh, it's your fault. It's
No,
your fault.
and I'm the only one who hasn't had them.
I haven't had them.
She just had beetroot.
I just had beetroot. So what happened in 1944, there was a German chemist in occupied Paris. He'd been tracking down stocks of uranium and thorium and sending it back to Germany. And there was enormous fear that the Nazis were about to develop their own nuclear weapons. And so a team of spies, who were collectively known as Alsos, were tasked with discovering what the Nazis' nuclear plans were. And they worked out eventually that all of this radioactive material was being stockpiled by a company in Germany hoping to gain a post-war monopoly on radioactive toothpaste. That was the plan. There was a very popular product called Doramad radioactive toothpaste. It was advertised as making your teeth shine with radioactive brilliance, which it absolutely would do, but they wouldn't stay in your mouth for very long. So there was a huge boost in things that were thought to be radioactive. There was something called the Revigator. It was a water jug lined with uranium ore, and it steadily gave off radon gas as the uranium decayed. It claimed to bring back that lost element of original freshness, radioactivity. There were lots of things for sexually weak men.
Keep talking.
A few ears have pricked up.
Something called magic radium massage. It was to be rubbed into the sex parts for firmness and strength and a pink, healthful appearance.
I'm sorry, where did we get this? Sorry.
The thing about it is, it would seem to work. So if your body is exposed to radiation, it begins to fight it, and it gives you a sort of short-term high as the blood flows around your body. So for a brief moment, it probably would seem rather marvellous. The long-term effects, obviously, devastating. Now, to a new kind of radioactivity. What did the man who invented radio really want to hear?
Well, since it's a man, probably his own voice.
Do you know...
I like men.
Me too, darling.
Anybody know who that is?
Marconi.
It is Guglielmo Marconi, the inventor of radio. Well, certainly one of the great pioneers of radio. He formulated a theory that sound never died, it just got weaker and weaker. And towards the end of his life, one of the things he wanted to discover was the right apparatus to be able to detect all sounds ever made. He hoped one day to invent some kind of apparatus sensitive enough to hear Jesus delivering his Sermon on the Mount. That's Jesus there, in case there's any doubt.
It was this big.
Yeah. So would he be right? Is it possible to detect sound from the past? Is it?
No.
No, why not?
Because sound travels forward.
To where? Where's it gone?
To the future.
OK. What did you do before you were a comedian?
I was a science teacher. My students have done really well. They've all graduated from Feltham Institute for Young Offenders.
So here's the thing about sound waves. They're gradually absorbed by air molecules, until they're no longer audible. They're just absorbed. But he is astonishing, Marconi. He got his first wireless patent when he was just 22. He had no formal education in science. I love this. He was aided by a series of tutors and manservants. I know. I suspect his valet came up with it. That's my... in fact, his very first transatlantic message depended on a device called a coherer. It seems to have been based on an unpatented design by an Indian physicist called Jagadish Chandra Bose, who had been demonstrating wireless telegraphy 2 years before Marconi managed it. He's from Bengal, and he wasn't allowed to work in a lab on the grounds of his race, so he had to build a makeshift lab at home.
So did Marconi steal his idea by listening into the past when he first said it?
What I love is the detail that you've grasped in this entire... They were both at the Sermon on the Mount. The very first transatlantic transmission, so it was from Cornwall to... Can you remember if it was Newfoundland? We did this. Newfoundland or Newfoundland?
Newfoundland.
It is Newfoundland, isn't it? Newfoundland. The very first transatlantic transmission, Cornwall to Newfoundland, people thought it was impossible.
It's called wow.
Why did people think it was impossible to go...
Curvature of the Earth?
Curvature of the Earth, absolutely, because radio waves travel in a straight line and the Earth is curved.
Is it? I thought it was flat.
Wow, what a science teacher you must have been. What they didn't know, of course, was that there's a reflecting layer in the atmosphere, the ionosphere, which the radio waves bounce. They bounce off.
Amazing. Also, if you said something loud enough, wouldn't the Earth turn and then people would all hear it eventually?
That's right, because sound travels forward.
It's a good question. I remember being in a revolving restaurant with my cousin...
You just said it's a good question to your own question.
Yeah. I'll tell you why. I was in a revolving restaurant in Sydney with my cousin, and she put her handbag down, and it didn't turn up again for 40 minutes.
You're right, sound is just like that. The thing that will please you, darling, is that Marconi didn't know why it was working, so you are not alone in your ignorance. He won the Nobel Prize in 1909, and in his acceptance speech, he freely admitted that with many of his inventions, he had no idea exactly how it was working, and I love that. So there's lots of good things about him. Less good, he fell in with Italy's fascists. When he died, the largest wreath was from Hitler, so there are bits about him that I think are far less good. But over 500,000 people lined the streets for his funeral processions, and to commemorate his death, radio stations in Italy and indeed in the UK and the United States and Canada all went silent for a minute.
Is that a way to discredit someone after they've died? Is to get someone really objectionable to send a massive wreath?
Oh, that's...
Yeah, that's a
I'm
good
sorry,
idea.
I couldn't hear you. The atmosphere was moving. What?
Come back in a year and it'll still be here.
Right, moving on. Where does this man keep his radio transmitter?
Where's his penis?
Well,
Who
that,
leaves the house without their penis?
weirdly, that is part of the answer.
All of us that have penises keep our
Careful.
radio transmitters in them.
You could.
Really?
What?
Could.
Where?
Yes. OK.
I picked up Classic FM earlier.
Who are you shagging?
So during the Cold War, the CIA developed a radio, obviously just for the boys. It was a secret radio hidden in a fake scrotum. I know, it's a joke. Oh, my God.
All right, that's an overreaction to the scrotum.
Do you know what's offensive about that? I had to pose for 8 hours for that.
Brushed you out.
They said it'd be tastefully done.
Was you're the only comedian with a detachable scrotum. That's why you got...
It was for pilots who might be captured and searched, for example. Obviously, our action man could not... I don't know, couldn't pull this off, I was going to say, but I don't know what the expression is. Anyway, I am told spies could slip it over an existing...
Oh, so it'd be go over
Scrotum.
the normal scrotum.
Yes, and then
Not
guards
really
would
done,
probably...
You could slip anything over your scrotum.
Well, apparently you had to put it on one testicle at a time. I'm just telling you...
What, and then staple it?
I think it would just...
Suction?
That's rubberised like a swimming hat.
I think it... Yeah, I think you pop...
If it's suction, it's not the getting it on I'm worried about, it's the getting it off.
Yeah.
Is that a one-size-fits-all?
I've run out of information. And what I can tell you is that, tragically, although built and tested, it was never, ever used in the field.
Well, did it overheat? That's what I'm worried about. I mean, it looks like a kitchen timer, like it would eventually go...
It'd be awful if you hadn't turned it off and you suddenly heard the Archer's theme tune. You can see this particular scrotum, should you wish, in Washington, D.C.'s International Spy Museum. There is also, and I don't know what I think about this, there is a toolkit with 10 different drill bits and saws and knives and so on, and those all fit in that canister, which can go up a spy's bottom. What I don't understand is how meticulous a spy would you be, because the second one from the right looks like a letter opener. I mean...
Well, I think at least 3 of them look like they do the same job.
Don't you think? Yeah. Now, it's time for the X-rated round that we call General Ignorance. Fingers on buzzers, please. What's the busiest man-made waterway in the world?
Evacuate.
Yes, Joe.
Birmingham Canal. I'm so livid.
I'm guessing it's not going to be one of the really famous ones.
Which one
like
do you think of
Suez
Suez.
or Panama.
Panama.
Not those.
No.
No? See
that
what I
one
did there?
Camden.
See what I did there? Save
Yeah,
yourself.
very good.
Eh?
Not
It's only
those.
taken you 16 series
Look
to
at
learn,
learn.
hasn't it?
Is it in the UK? Give us a clue, give us a clue.
It's German.
German?
German. Das Canal.
The Kiel Canal. So it cuts across the North German...
I was going to say that, the keel.
It cuts across the North German state of Schleswig-Holstein, part of which, can I just say, actually should belong to Denmark. Just going to put it out there. Anyway, so in 2018, more than 42,500 ships passed through the Kiel Canal, as well as about, I don't know, 20,000 yachts and private motorboats and so on. It was originally conceived as a way, inexplicably, for German ships to avoid Denmark. I mean...
Oh.
The Kiel Canal is the best way of avoiding Denmark. Not that you would want to. Now, If you are pregnant, what is the best way of inducing labour?
Oh, I know.
Alert!
Vote.
Have a curry. I heard that works.
What, the curry thing?
Curry doesn't work.
Yeah.
Beckoning with an Oreo at the opening.
Wow, weirdly, all the studies we looked at, that wasn't one that came up.
No?
Right? No. Right.
Come on, come on.
There's lots of myths about how to get labour started in pregnant women. The most common ways are walking, sex, ingesting spicy food, and nipple stimulation. So, sex does not work. This is not a general statement. It's... they did a study in about 1,500 women. It doesn't work, makes no difference. There are no studies which deduce that spicy food or even walking definitely would work.
I love the fact that studies, like they've been giving pregnant women curries, hotter and hotter curries. Yeah. Nothing.
Take it up to a file.
Is it coming? No.
Women who say it does work, it may be something we call confirmation bias. So you know it's supposed to help to have curry, and therefore you say that was a factor, but it's very unlikely to be true. Castor oil, raspberry leaf tea, there's all sorts of things.
There was that woman that went into labour after watching Michael McIntyre.
Was it Mrs. McIntyre?
Was she watching him do stand-up or just watching him
she
from
was
his garden?
Just watching him.
The one thing that does seem to work, nipple stimulation. Now, this...
Oh, it's coming!
So here's the weird thing. This is from the study, OK? Women whose nipples have been stimulated, so rolled between the fingers, for 1 to 3 hours a day.
This scientist needs locking up.
Oh!
Who can be bothered to do that?
And it has to be one nipple at a time, or 33% more likely to go into labour within 72 hours, or kill you, I think.
You look like you're tuning my penis radio, Alan.
I've got Chris Moyles.
According to the largest study on the subject, this stimulation also reduces the risk of heavy bleeding after delivery by 84%. So this is the thing.
Top tip.
Really?
Top tip, nipple stimulation. Can I just say, always ask your doctor before spending 3 hours rubbing your nipples.
I always do, and he hates answering the calls.
Is that the comedian Josh Widdicombe?
I'm going to say that every time I ring the surgery now. Hello, it's Josh Widdicombe here. It's the entire audience, OK? Let's all pretend we're ringing the doctors. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Hello, it's Josh Widdicombe here.
My medical history is going to be a mess. Says he has a problem with his vagina.
That's nothing. His scrotum fell off last time he was here. Right, it's time for the scores. Glowing with health in first place. Oh, my goodness, with -1. It's Josh! In second place with -6 is Shazia! And in third place with -17, Joe! And having an absolute meltdown in last place with -25, it's Alan. And it's thanks to Shazia and Joe, Josh and Alan. That's it from us. I'll leave you with the rallying cry of the protesters from the campaign to save Radio 4 Longwave in 1993. As they marched, they shouted, "What do we want? Longwave. When do we want it? Now. And what do we say? Please, thank you, and good night."